Welcome to the Afternoon Snack Podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Root. This is a podcast
Well, hold up. I want to be part of the intro, too.
Okay, go ahead.
Never mind. You can do it.
Okay. Like I was saying, I'm Meredith Root, former engineer, CrossFit Games athlete, and owner of Tactic Nutrition. That was the one and only Alex Parker, former lawyer, also a CrossFit Games athlete, and co-owner of Tactic Nutrition. This podcast is about fitness, health, nutrition, CrossFit, business, mindset, and things that grind our gears.
Wait, hang on. Ivy wants to say something. Go ahead, Ivy. She's shy.
No surprise there. Our goal is to give you something to think, talk about, hopefully make you laugh a little along the way. Good day, Alex.
Good day, sir.
Good day, madam. How are you?
Good. I PR'd my 5K this morning.
What did you run? Is that an actual PR? Like
I
lifetime PR?
I think it might be. I don't ever recall doing a 5K for time. The only other time I may have had a sub 25K was I did a. Our guest is intruding. I did a sprint triathlon with it. It finished with a 5K run. And I was under sub 20, but I didn't have a Garmin watch, so I don't know if it was actually 5K.
Yeah, because sometimes those courses are short.
Yeah, but I would say today was a PR.
And like 0 out of 10, like Borg scale this for me. Where was it?
Like 8.9.
Really?
9.
I think it was a 9.
It was
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is enough about you, but
Okay, so I guess I'll introduce the guest. We have a pretty inspirational guest on today. She can bench press 135 pounds, deadlifts 270 pounds. She just yesterday PR'd her max reps strict pull-ups at 4. She bakes a mean chocolate chip cookie. She just found a new chin hair.
Me too.
She has completed 4 marathons, but prefers to keep her times confidential. She's passed a kidney stone, and she has great genes. It's my mom.
It's your mom.
Welcome.
thank you.
Glad to, and it's Brenda.
Yeah, everyone knows.
I mean, like
Alex's mom, Brenda.
at Alex's mom, Brenda, which is the greatest Instagram handle. Yeah. So welcome to the podcast. You're sitting on the podcast couch with Alex.
I am in a borrowed pair of socks and a blanket.
I mean, we aim to please. We
We like to call blankets blankies.
Oh, okay.
Do we?
Yeah, it's comforting.
Did we? Is that new?
It's new.
Just now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that like Rice Krispies?
Yeah. Well, it was because we were in Moraine and Meredith brought a blankie for me. And I had it kind of like wrapped around, and it just was better suited to call it a blankie at that moment because I was very childish.
It's a great story. I'm not surprised you guys have a podcast.
Don't worry, we have way more where that came from. Yeah, so we had Brenda on the podcast like about a year ago, a little over a year ago actually. One of the earlier episodes. And I think that podcast we had wine, but it's not quite wine 30, so coffee today. And that was a really popular and continues to be a really popular podcast. So why not do it again?
Yeah. Last time you talked a lot about like your dieting history and how you kind of got to where you are, which is a state of really like not caring as much about your appearance. And I mean that in the nicest way possible.
Not like
It's not like you appear bad. You just don't care.
not
you know?
like we needed to give up. You just need to not.
Yeah, you're not giving up. You just like you're focused on other things.
This
Like
is-
performance and health and
is
longevity.
This is going well.
When is this over?
Yeah. Well, what we wanted to touch on something. You don't have COVID. You have postnasal drip.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm a
there's-
little coughy, but I always am. So
Yeah.
Have you been tested?
I have not, but I've
Okay.
been like this for 7 years. So
And also been kind of like sort of, hermit for 2 years. So the likelihood is
Yeah,
Right.
true.
like us is low. All right. Well, where do we want to kick this
Well,
thing off?
On the COVID topic, we were laughing yesterday because we went to the grocery store and remember when COVID first hit and we needed masks and everyone was like buying like really cool masks and like it was kind of like a stylish thing.
You were like concerned with like what your mask looked like with your outfit and this and that. And now, like, I don't know about you, I'm to the point where I will put literally anything on my face. Like, we get where we're going. I'm like, crap. I'm, like, looking around the car. I'm
like I pulled a mask out in between like the seat,
found
like down where you lose like Cheerios.
Yeah. Like, I'm good. I got one. Yeah. Is this yours or is this mine? Which way's out?
Like I smelled on my mask the other day peppermint gum, and I don't chew gum.
I will frequently put it on and notice that there has to be ivy hair on the inside of the mask. It's like what is on my face here? Yeah. I wonder if that's probably pretty common.
Yeah,
Just
everyone just no one cares anymore.
Mask apathy. Maskapy.
okay, so I'm just going to go.
It was nice having you on again.
Okay, well, actually, what have you been up to lately? How's training? Well, let's talk about training first, and then we can get into more of the nutrition stuff and what you've been doing lately.
Well, so training's changed a fair bit because I found out what was making my shoulders hurt a lot. And turns out they're pretty wrecked. And one at least will have to be replaced at some point, depending on how well I care for it. And so I had to stop all overhead weight stuff. I can still do pull-ups, I can still do rope climbs, but all the overhead weight things have completely stopped. So I kind of miss that stuff, but at least I still have a coach that can make things interesting and still do other things. And yeah.
So no double dumbbell overhead squats anymore.
Nothing.
Kettlebell overhead squats.
No, I never did overhead squats anyway. So
You don't have to tell them that. It can be our secret.
But you recently just PR'd your strict pull-ups.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long ago you got your first one. That was in Palm Springs that one day.
Yeah, that was, I don't know, I think
About a year and a half.
I was
2 years ago?
I'm 62 now, and I think I was under 60. Like, I think it was maybe before my 60th birthday.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
Strict pull up by 60. I remember that now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a milestone.
So
which
that's
is pretty
good.
incredible to begin with. And now we've added 3.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Have you noticed your arm or back muscles have changed? Are you more muscular since you got your first pull-up?
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Nice.
My back.
Have you been focusing on like what your muscles look like, or is that just a result of you training hard and eating healthy?
No, I put a bra on one day and went to put tight shirt on, and I just took a look to see what my hair looked like in the back, and I couldn't believe how I was busting out of my bra. So I asked your father
In the back, not
in the back,
front,
yeah.
for clarity.
And I asked your father to check it, and he's been laughing at my back ever since.
Nice. So that's not a result of you focusing on your looks.
No, it's too late to focus on my looks.
Well, we just have a lot of clients who their goal is to change the way they look, but you don't have control over the way you look. You have control over like what you can do. Like,
yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. I don't think you can control. Yeah. I mean, other than, I guess, if you want, if you're, if you maybe want to lose some weight or gain some weight or something, just so that you're, not as heavy or not as skinny as you want to be, or as fat as you want to be, or heavy or whatever. Like that to me is one thing, but the rest of it, no, you can't really control that. It's nice if you have someone like, so with Mike programming me, things just developed over the years to an extent that I wasn't expecting. And it's just kind of nice that it comes as a surprise. Like all of a sudden one day somebody says something to you and you don't even notice, and that you've, developed some muscle somewhere. Or
So what's your mindset like going into each workout? And like, do you have any specific fitness goals right now, or is it essentially just to kind of like do your best in each workout and get fitter, stay fit, that sort of thing? Like, do you have any very specific goals?
I have no specific goals. I don't think I've had any specific goals since I started with Mike, except for the pull-ups. I really wanted to do pull-ups and then got to the point that I didn't think I would. But other than that, I don't think I ever had any specific goals. Recently, Mike said that I could probably eventually do a 300-pound deadlift. I'm not sure if he was joking or not, but
You use the trap bar.
for that heavy, I think
Yeah.
it would probably be the trap bar. But other than that, no goals. I just kind of follow along. And like the pull-ups yesterday, like I said, it came as a surprise. So I just assume that if there's any goals involved, he's setting them and programming my workouts accordingly.
How often do you miss a workout that he programs for you?
Oh, hardly ever. I can't think of a time where I missed a
So you would say like
workout.
working out is a very big priority of yours.
Oh yeah, it's just something. Yeah, it's just sort of part of my day. It's
How frequently do you work out?
6 days, and then just recently we were making a move and we got really really busy. So I actually took almost a whole week off, I think, and then reduced to 4 times a week for maybe a week or two, and then I'm back up to 6 days now.
And how long approximately do your workouts take per day?
It kind of depends, but I'd say on average, maybe an hour to an hour and a half.
And would you say, so if you had to break down, like how much aerobic versus like strength-based stuff do you do? So like cardio versus strength-based, like, I mean, some of it's mixed, like you'll do like Metcon stuff with like wall balls or air squats or push-ups.
I'm not sure. I haven't thought about it. I could be completely off, but I'm thinking almost 50-50 because even if I'm doing, like today, I didn't do any aerobic stuff, but usually there's something involved, even if it's like 15 minutes or something after some strength training stuff. So I don't know. I feel like it's kind of even or maybe a little bit more strength than aerobic. I don't pay that much attention, actually. I just kind of do what I'm told to do.
How important do you think it is to have somebody, like to have a coach?
I think it's incredibly important. I think, I mean, if you can afford to do it, I think it's absolutely invaluable. I mean, I would probably, back in the day, you know, I do things, videotapes, and I just keep doing the same ones and increasing weights and stuff. I think it's important for motivation, because if you have somebody that can change things up all the time, then you don't really get that bored. And then the other thing is it's just nice to have, especially I think when you're older and you have limitations, like I do have quite a few limitations with mobility and stuff like that. And it's really nice to have a coach who can work around that and can also work around whether or not you do have goals. Like I'm sure, you know, coaches have clients who have specific goals and they can work with those, or they can work with someone like me. And then also somebody who is able to figure out how motivated you are. Like I'm prepared to push myself, whereas your dad, who, you know, was a great runner and stuff, just is not prepared to push himself quite as hard in workouts. And so it's just nice to have somebody who can, and also if you get injured, then they can work around that and you can still have decent workouts, you know, not using some part of your body as much. Yeah. So I think it's the best thing, one of the best decisions I've ever made.
I think that's a important topic because a lot of people, like, you know, even the older generation, they go into a CrossFit gym because their kids do it or they've seen it on TV or whatever, and they do have limitations, and either they aren't aware of what they are, so they aggravate those limitations, or they're scaling improperly, and so they're losing the kind of the intended like stimulus of the workout. And so I think then, like, when you're a little bit older, you really do have to take advantage of the time that you have to train and get what you need to get out of it. And so I think that's where having an individualized coach like Mike is so important and so useful, because you really do get the most out of your like 60 or 90 minutes or whatever you have to work out during the day versus just going to a class, you know, scaling the crap out of a CrossFit workout and, like, you know, not getting a whole lot out of it more than just moving your body for 30 minutes.
And I think it's important, especially if you're older, to have a coach who actually knows what they're doing with older people and understands that. Because, for instance, even when I was working with Mike, the year that I did the Open, and Alex and I would do it together, and then she would invite me to do a second workout with her, and I would do it, and I'd be all excited, and then I, basically would lose consciousness for several days, and then she would she would do little programs for me if we were away or something, and she has no clue. And I mean, under her supervision, I think, bad stuff would have happened. Like one time we went to the gym, and it was when I think you were in law school, or I don't know where you were, but you were working out a lot by yourself at OPT. And so I would go with her, and she'd say, "Oh, you should do my workout with me instead of yours." And I'd say, "Oh, okay. Oh, well, maybe." And then she'd say no. And then she'd set everything up before I had a chance to actually say no. And one time I had never cleaned, what do you call those? A sandbag. Never done it before. And I think these were 80 or 100-pound sandbags. So Alex says, "Well, here, I'll show you how, and you can clean it onto like a 30-inch box or something." So she picks up the sandbag and she shows me the technique, and I do it. And then she said, "How was that?" And I said, "Well, I think I did it, but I think I also ripped myself a new one." Like, no warm up, not a clue that I am not her, and I cannot just manhandle a 100-pound sandbag just like that walking into a gym.
Yeah, that's a theme, I think, for Alex, in the way she goes through life with other people. The assumption is that everyone has the same capability and whatever. I have similar stories with skiing. Okay, so we don't have to get into those. The last time you were on, we kind of discussed your history with dieting and exercise and just kind of the different phases that you went through, and I think a lot of people found that to be pretty relatable. Looking back, is there something now that you would tell your 30 or 40-year-old self? Or is there anything you wish that you knew that you know now?
We work with, I would say the majority of our clients are around the age of like 30 to 40. Mm-hmm. So any advice, whether it's nutrition or fitness related or something else?
So,
or advice to your younger self.
Advice to my younger self is, and this is still something that I continue to work out, but I'm getting better, is that it just doesn't matter. Like, you have to just accept what you look like. Like, you can improve it, you can change it, you can work to do those things, and you'll probably have some results. But ultimately, if there's a part of your body that you focus on, which I'm going to say a lot of us do, like try to just not, because it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't, when you go out and you look, like if you worry about what you're going to look like on the beach, and you could worry about it for weeks, and then somehow when you get out on the beach and you're in a bikini or something and you look around and you're like, this is humanity.
I'm not actually that bad.
And you're not that bad, and nobody is that bad, and nobody should be, nobody should feel that bad. Like, it doesn't matter, and it just doesn't. And when you look at so as a woman, you think, oh, my body and what I look like and stuff. Look at all the men who are with women who you kind of think, they're not that attractive, or they have this or they have that. Like, men have, if you're a woman worried about what men think of you, like, men have different tastes, and so do women. Like, and women are harsh judges, and they should stop doing that. But it just doesn't matter. Like, you just have to really try to accept yourself. Like, just try to move past it, and like you have always been, Alex, since you were a kid. Really just celebrate what your body is able to do for you, as opposed to what it looks like.
But how do you, like, and I try to tell my clients this, they'll say, like, I feel fat, or I have this problem, or, I can't look at myself in the mirror. And like, what I see is a really healthy individual. Like, maybe they don't look like a CrossFit Games athlete, but like, they look like a strong, healthy, young, like female, or they have kids. And it's like, there's so much more than like, the fact that you want a flatter belly. And I'm like, you need to practice positive self-talk. Like, instead of looking in your mirror and looking at, and, picking apart your body, like I'll say, like, think about what your body can do. Like, tell me something you love about your body. Like, what's an actionable item that you found helpful in order to move past it? Like, do you just try to brush it out of your mind and focus on what matters and what you have to, or like, what is that?
Yeah, I think you just have to keep telling yourself. It's like anything. And, and when you say I feel fat, I mean, like everybody, I have days where I feel particularly lean, and then I can go through periods where I just get really like a lot of, it seems like inflammation and a lot of water retention. And I feel, kind of, I just don't feel comfortable. And I know I look sort of different. I mean, most people aren't going to notice it in clothes and stuff. But somehow over the past 10, 12, 14 years, it's taken some time, but somehow I can move on and it's not going to ruin my day. And it's not going to change what I eat, except if I feel full or something, I may eat less. But it's just, it's an effort. Like you have to just keep telling yourself and working at it. And it's not going to happen overnight, but you have to kind of commit to it. I'm not sure what happened to me, why I kind of turned a corner. But I did. And it's just like, binging. I continued to binge over time, but it got less and less. And now I don't. And it took time. But I think people really need to work on that, because it's hard, but especially if you have children, boys or girls, I think they pick up on that stuff a lot more than you think. And with social media and stuff now, it's really not a good thing for young people to be focused on that, because you might think you're hiding it, but your kids pick up on it.
Yeah, and I think eventually, like, as you age and get older, if you're holding on to the way you looked when you were 25 or 30, or the way, you're chasing an appearance, there's going to come a time where things do start changing in an irreversible way. And you have to be, like, at that point, if you're so attached to the way that you looked when you were younger, or the way that you want to look, or this or that, like, what do you do then when those changes start occurring? If you don't love what your body can do and have some deep appreciation for it, like, does the self-hate just grow? Like, where does that road go? That's where I think it goes.
And even sometimes, so I used to say this to the girls if they'd be mad at something, I'd be like, you should just be grateful that you have legs. But it's true.
Classic.
Because some people don't. And I don't know if sometimes, if you're driving down the street and you see someone on a corner who's like in a wheelchair, or, has some disability or something, and you kind of think, man, how lucky am I? And you have to think that, like, if you just, yesterday you had a good run and today you're feeling crappy about yourself, you should think like I should be really grateful that I was able to do that.
Yeah, I think there's a balance between, at least for people who are high achieving, type A, competitive, there's always that struggle to do that and balance gratefulness for like what you have, while also like the desire to have more. And so I think there's a fine line where the desire to have more and the desire to achieve can make you ungrateful for what you have. And that's it's a good at that point to have someone in your life who can kind of provide a little bit of perspective, or moments, or whatever. Because I think that's a real struggle for a lot of people.
One more thing that I'll add now that I'm thinking about it, I think that the years of working with Mike, the training has made a difference, because it almost, for if you're into it and you really like it and you like the surprises when you PR or you learn something new, you're forced to kind of remove some focus on what you look like, and the sense of satisfaction that you get out of having your body do those things can kind of just, it can be just so much greater than the negative thoughts about your body, or I guess you're just spending more time being positive about what it can do. So I think that has made a difference too over the years.
Yeah. And when we've talked about Mike a few times, but in case you don't know who we're talking about Mike Fitzgerald, who owns Optimum Performance Training, OPT, here in Calgary, and he programs for me and Alex, but also programs for Brenda and Alex's dad, Garth. And the thing that's interesting about Mike is there's kind of been this push, or like, you know, a lot of the coaches in the CrossFit space are really pushing for performance athletes, and that's kind of where their focus is. And Mike can certainly program for high level games athletes, but I think he gets just as much satisfaction seeing, you know, someone like you progress, or someone like Garth, or, you know, really anyone. It doesn't matter, I think, necessarily to him where, like, what the starting point is. In fact, like, he might get more satisfaction out of having a bit of a project and seeing someone who, you know, you might not think would ever be particularly high achieving or be able to do 4 pull-ups or, you know, whatever, achieve those goals as a result of, like, his programming, which I find a very relatable perspective, because we work with kind of the same population of people. And just like Mike, I think a lot of people assume that the interest is only in, like, high performing athletes, when in reality there's just as much satisfaction in helping, you know, a really busy mom of 3 kind of refocus and find her love for herself, and, you know, help a person like that achieve goals in addition to high performing athletes.
And he doesn't have the same expectations with everybody. So I could go into him and say, I could have had a completely different fitness level when I went in to meet him the first time. And I could have said to him, you know, you know, I maybe 3 days a week. And I may not be somebody who wants to learn to climb a rope or do a pull up or something. And he's fine with that. Like, he'll work with your needs and your abilities and all that stuff. So it's not everybody has to, be, or some older people might be intimidated or something because they go into a gym and see people like you, but not everybody has to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So do you want to switch over quickly? So we talked, like Meredith said, we talked a lot about your nutrition last time, but what are, like, over the past year, has anything really changed? Like, are you still tracking your food? If so, like, why, and why do you find that useful? And how do you kind of incorporate, it's a little bit different with COVID because maybe you're not going out as much, not that you were a big party animal or anything, but how do you strike a balance, and how do you maintain a healthy relationship with food now with tracking and stuff like that?
So, excuse me, nothing has changed a lot in the past year. I still track, but not like super precisely. I basically track to make sure I'm in the ballpark every day. I think, again, I'm sure I've said this in the last one, but the biggest thing for me is protein. And if I'm not tracking, I struggle enough to get enough protein as it is. And if I'm not tracking, there's absolutely no way I know I would not get enough protein. And even measuring, like, if I'm looking at a piece of chicken, I am always going to underestimate or overestimate what it is. So, you know, I'm looking for 150 grams of chicken. If I pull out a piece of chicken and I look at it and I think, oh, this is 150, and I throw it on the scale, I'm like, oh God, it's only 100. So I think without measuring some stuff and tracking, I'd probably be off. And
what is your protein intake each day?
I like to say it's 150, but I've struggled to get up there lately. So I'd say I average around 135-ish. And then some days, like, I'll be 155, and I like to think it kind of all balances out.
What
so that's about 1 gram per pound of body weight.
A little
protein.
over.
A little over for you.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
that's a big one, I think, for especially the older population. Protein's a really big deal. And we get a lot of people who will complain about it or say, I can't get it in, I can't do this. What are some of the positive changes that you noticed when you increased your protein intake a few years ago?
I was really struggling with inflammation at the time. That changed very quickly. I mean, I still do on and off, but
inflammation in terms of like swelling, bloating.
Yeah. Just whatever.
Water retention problems.
Yeah. And it was
achiness,
just
like joint pain.
Yeah. I noticed that was very quick. That was a very quick improvement. And then, so I've always had really thick hair, and I know a lot of women my age who are losing hair, and I don't know how many I've said, you need to eat more protein. So my hair has actually gotten thicker to the point, as you know, that it's like out of control. And I think that was the protein. And then a couple of other things I read. So I went through this thing where, and I think Alex, you had this too, where my eyelids would get super, super dry, and it's almost like painful, and they get really flaky and stuff. And I haven't touched wood. I haven't had that since I increased my protein. And I read about a year ago that could be a sign of low protein.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So there's all kinds of things like that, but
It sounds really cute. Flaky eyelids.
It's
it's
a natural
painful.
It's a natural eyeshadow.
yeah.
Yeah,
'cause
it's like
turns
gets red
Yeah.
and ugh. It wasn't very comfortable at all. So I haven't had that since my protein intake. So I'd say those are the biggest things. And again, like for older people losing their hair, honest to God, that I think can really help.
Okay, so eating protein no one wants to eat like 150 grams of chicken, or like some days you'll pull out like a piece of dry roasted turkey, or your snacks are
Half a beef burger.
half a beef burger, or like we're on the beach in Maui and you pull out a baggie of like shredded chicken. Like that's not what people want to eat. But like you see for you, and like you don't particularly enjoy eating dry chicken on the beach.
No.
So you do it because you see like that many positive benefits. Like when you think like I don't want to eat this chicken, like I'd rather have a margarita or whatever it is. What do you tell yourself? Like is it a habit now, or
It's just a habit now. I don't even think about it. Like
it's just what you do, and the benefits are as great as they are, and it's worth eating things that you maybe don't necessarily like, but in your diet you also have a lot of balance. Like you do enjoy wine, you do enjoy these other things. Like
yeah. So yeah, I do enjoy I do enjoy a little wine. And going back to body and stuff and changing bodies, I'm pretty sure that if I cut back on my wine, there are parts of my body that I'm not that crazy about that would probably change a little bit without the wine consumption. But
What's the point?
seriously, is it worth it?
for me, it's not. And, like my husband said, you want to look a bit thinner around there, or you want to be happy.
You choose.
But that's a good takeaway.
I do enjoy, a nip of wine here and there.
Just a nip.
Just a nip.
But it's even stuff. So tonight we're celebrating Alex's birthday a couple of days early, and we're getting our favorite cupcakes for her birthday. And I even kind of think about that because I don't eat that much gluten. I'm not I wouldn't say gluten intolerant, but
You mispronounced it.
what?
Gluten.
Gluten. But I actually think, I won't eat that many, and then I won't eat that much, or I won't eat all the icing, and then I will, because we do. And I just know that the next couple of days, I'm going to suffer a bit. Like I'm not going to feel that well. My stomach's going to be a bit sore because I'm not used to eating that much sugar. I'm not used to, and I'm still going to eat it, but there's a consequence to it, and there's a reason that I don't do it every day. Like I'm
so
sure
it's like once a month or once every few weeks, it's like worth it.
Yeah, like if we go out for dinner, I don't think about it. I don't think about what I'm eating or what, we're having for dessert or anything like that. But it's just sometimes like if I know it's coming, I sort of think, oh, I can't wait for the cupcakes. Oh, the next day is going to be kind of icky. But I think the longer that I eat reasonably well, the less I tolerate crap, I think.
Which is incentive to avoid it even more. It's like a slippery slope, but in a good way.
Yeah. So I'm not actually making any choices. It just is what it is.
Yeah, and I think even if it's not an active decision, there's still like a bit of muscle memory to it. Like you do remember the way that you feel after a day of cupcakes and wine, and that kind of like paints the decision making a little bit. But like there's a lifestyle cost to being extreme with your diet and with your training, and that's I think what a lot of people don't realize when they set really, really aggressive aesthetic goals or performance goals. It's like, yeah, you want to go to the CrossFit Games. That's great. Like, be prepared to give up everything else in your life, or you want to get really, really lean, like bodybuilding lean. Like, that's fine. But be prepared to give up literally every social event that you have on your calendar for the next year.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when the girls come over for dinner most weekends on Saturday night, and Meredith will enjoy some wine with me. And then she drinks so much. And I'm like looking at her and I'm thinking, oh, Meredith, you are going to hurt tomorrow. But, I usually rein it in pretty early. But so she's always a good reminder.
We actually had to move like weekend dinners to Saturday because Meredith on Monday morning, we get up early to start work. And she's like, I'm hungover.
Well, it's not even hungover. It's like I don't drink that often. And a couple of glasses, it's not like a hangover, but it does create some brain fog the next day. So it's not something.
So when you're texting your clients, you're like, "Oh man, like how was your weekend?" I feel horrible. I too many cupcakes, too much wine.
I hope you did better than I did. Yeah, it's best to have that day on Sunday when I don't have to talk to anyone. Okay, so we got 2 questions. We'll move on. We got 2 questions, and I know that there are more people who follow us who are wondering about this, but asking about training after menopause and if you had to work harder for muscle growth. And I know we've kind of already talked about that part, but let's talk about it again.
What's the science say?
What does the science say?
Yeah, like what is the science? What, like, a lot of people say like, oh, this happened, once I hit menopause.
Yeah, so there's this misconception about what menopause is and what it does in the body. And so what menopause is essentially the 2 female sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, that tend to oppose each other during the menstrual cycle. They both bottom out. Just low. You're in a low hormonal
So
state.
can I just correct you? It's not. It's when you stop getting your period.
Yeah, okay.
For the boys out there.
Who don't know of that.
And that's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It just goes away and nothing else changes. That's what I've heard, at least.
Yeah, so you're in a low hormonal state. And so that has, especially estrogen has a pretty big impact on energy levels. But essentially there's nothing hormonal that's going on that makes muscle building any more difficult than it is when you're younger. Maybe you get a slight anabolic effect from estrogen, maybe, but you're not looking at, an anabolic effect that is anywhere remotely close to the anabolic effect of testosterone. So even if you wanted to make that argument, you're talking about orders of magnitude less, muscle growth stimulating effect than, a man. And so really nothing hormonal that's going on. The main difference when people go through menopause and after is you see kind of a natural decline in activity level. So move around less. Women are less likely to exercise, lift weights, and then also the protein intake is probably already a problem and becomes even more of a problem as people age. So you start looking at a decline in activity level, a decline in movement, and a decline in protein intake. And so that's why people say, oh, well, after menopause, your metabolic rate decreases. Your metabolic rate is decreasing because you're moving around less and you're starting to sort of slough off lean body mass. And so that's what causes your BMR to drop. But tell me about your experience.
Well, I don't know. I don't know really if you gain muscle less quickly after. What I know is based on my experience and what I did before I went through menopause, and then say in the last, I don't know how long I've been working with Mike, 5 or 6 years, I have gained more muscle since I've been in menopause than I think I ever did when I was younger. Again, I wasn't in, some kind of like programming or anything like that. I did kind of work out and I ran and all that stuff, but I've definitely gained more muscle
You were also working full time before.
Right. Yeah.
Which makes a difference. Stress and sleep and
Yeah.
things like that.
But definitely gain more muscle. And when I started with Mike, I'm not going to go through that whole story, but basically it was in the hopes of maintaining what I had because I was told to stop running and stuff. So I went to him thinking, well, I'm mid 50s or whatever, late 50s. And I thought at best, I can maintain what I have, thinking that you couldn't gain any muscle after, a certain age. And indeed you can. So there's muscle and also just what my body can tolerate. And I think, again, a good best example is skiing. And Alex can attest to this. My husband can attest to it. Not only can I ski longer and, as hard as I did, but certainly longer than I used to. I have more endurance. but my body just bounces back. Like I can actually do it 2 and 3 days in a row and ski with Alex and, ski like steep slopes with her and actually be able to function the next day and get skis on again and do it all over again. I was amazed when we got back on skis last year or 2 years ago, I guess it was. Yeah. So I don't think it's ever really too late to do something.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
I think it is too. I think you get really conflicting information, especially if you watch the news. I know I've seen a number of segments on like the Today Show when they're talking about, well, here's the best exercise to do after menopause. And it's always like bands and like really lightweight and, this and that. And I'm like, look, the best exercise to do is the exact same exercise you would do before menopause.
Strength training, strength training, strength training.
That's it. And I think
like yoga doesn't count. Sorry.
I feel like strength training is probably more important as you age.
100%.
And you want to maintain your bone mass and stuff, right?
Yep.
So,
and there's been tons of research that's compared the, because once you start to lose, there's really no way to regain bone mass. Like you can't really reverse it, but you can stop bone loss. And that's sort of been researched. There's a number of papers that have come out on that where they basically compare, the rates of bone loss in resistance trained elderly women and control group or, women doing aerobic training. And the resistance training, the weightlifting group just blows the control group and the aerobic group out of the water every time. And it's really easy to measure it. You just do a DEXA. And it's the evidence is so compelling to me that it's shocking that we're not hearing about it in the news. That it's not what's put out
mainstream media.
Yeah.
And even doing stuff, and I think some of the, if you're doing lunges and all that, a lot of that stuff is important too, because you do tend to start losing your balance. Mm-hmm. And I think what I do has really helped to maintain my balance. Like I still have really good balance. Like I can jump up on like a 12-inch box with one foot, which apparently is not that common for a lot of older people. And it's a lot, I think Mike said a lot of that is due to lack of balance. So balance is super important.
Yeah.
I think as you get older, you want to do stuff to maintain that.
Totally. Yeah. So I think that's a really important message. And I hope if people are listening and they're, late 40s, early 50s, and they're concerned that's, makes them less concerned. But really it's about, the best case scenario when you're aging is that you come into that period of your life and you already have a high lean body mass from years of strength training. That's the best thing that, I think you can do. And if you're not in that situation, then like it's not too late to start moving yourself in that direction. Just because you're pre or perimenopause or even postmenopause doesn't mean that like you can't make positive changes to your body and your lean body mass.
And I think going through menopause too, I had a very, like I would say, relatively speaking, quite a positive experience with it. Like it wasn't horribly negative like some women. I think part of that I chalk up to, half decent nutrition at the time. The fact that I was active, I think activity, I don't know, I think being active can help a lot of things. And also, I just would really like to add, since we started on the topic of menopause, I have told, and this isn't just for menopause, but women, just with issues with periods and stuff like that. I don't know how many women I've told this to, but try acupuncture. It was amazing, and I think it made the whole menopause thing 1,000 times. And Alex can certainly attest to this, that even though I'm known for mood swings, I had mood.
I come by it naturally.
I mean, when I was premenopausal, I mean, there was probably, I don't know, a year or something before where, things would get really ugly, and I would go to this acupuncturist once in a while when I would have like really bad muscle issues, like just tighten, from stress or whatever. And then one day I said to him, I'm kind of struggling with this, and, I'm not going to go into details of what, and he was like, oh yeah, I think I could help you with that. And so I went and saw him a week before I was supposed to get my period for a number of months, and these two little needles just above my ankles. And it was so effective that the girls, I don't know how old you were then, like 15 years ago or whatever. So you would have been like mid-teens. And the girls would say to me, did you make your appointment? Do you have your appointment this month? So I would highly recommend that. Highly, 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 highly recommend it.
We actually just met last week during the photo shoot. One of the girls there was a acupuncturist, and she specializes in like pelvic floor and like PMS.
Fertility stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a thing. 100%.
So another question, and this is kind of touching back on the last podcast where you had some inspiration from Oprah. Does your obsession continue?
No, I haven't really followed Oprah much for a number of years. I haven't. And then I was in, I think, like a hair salon or something, and I was reading Oprah magazine. And I kind of was a bit turned off because it was like all these things that, must haves. And one was like some $400 US white blouse, and everybody should have one. And I'm thinking to myself, have you completely lost touch? Like, most of the world cannot afford a $400 blouse. So, but I haven't really. I mean, plus she went off the air years ago, so I'm not really obsessed with her that much.
The most recent Ellen DeGeneres stand-up, it's been out for a few years now. It just reminded me that she kind of makes fun of that phenomenon where you lose touch with what is relatable and what is not relatable. And so Ellen, in the opening monologue, is talking about, how she's like, I did something the other day that everyone has done, in their life. And I was taking a shower, and then I turned the shower off, and I realized that I didn't have a towel. And so what did I do? I stepped onto my, whatever bath mat, and I shimmied across my 40-foot long bathroom, like
marble floor,
and it's Italian marble. So and she's just going on, and she's kind of poking fun at that phenomenon. And it's not the first time I've heard stories about Oprah specifically, but it just reminded me of that monologue, which was really funny.
Or when she used to do those shows where she'd do giveaways, and it was always like, oh, well, everybody needs one of these, this $7 million jammy pant or something. Like, I just was like, get over yourself. But yeah.
Well, there was, do you remember she used to give away, like, everyone in the audience would get a car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, how many people in the audience can't even afford the taxes on that car?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, anyways, kind of funny.
There is one question, and I have this question all the time. We want more Brenda. When is Brenda going to take over the tactic Instagram? And also, why don't you post more?
So, to the first question, my question is, who the hell is that? Like, trust me, anybody who has more Brenda has too much.
My dad can attest to that.
She's like salt.
I don't know. I'm just kind of, I don't know, the posting thing. It's still, to me, it's just sort of an odd thing to do. And I'm always, if like Alex will say, we should post that or something. And I feel like I'm showing off or something if I'm posting something about workouts, like I do once in a while. But, and then a day in the life of, I mean, I don't know. My day is so boring. Like, I mean, it would have been good years ago when the kids were growing up and we were really busy with sports and I was working, because that was just like, it wasn't like this for them, but for anybody else watching, it would have been like a sitcom. But nowadays, I mean, I don't know. My day's pretty boring. I don't do anything too exciting.
On that note, we have two questions. The first one is, what was Alex like as a child? And then the second one is, some of us have teenage daughters and would like advice. What was Alex like as a teen? So I feel like you can just go in chronological order and answer.
So easy answer to those.
Don't flatter me too much because I'm right here.
Easy answer to those. First of all, I'm surprised that Alex allowed that question, because she always gets mad when I tell stories about her as a kid. But really, technically, Alex was never a child nor a teen. I think the best way to describe it, I think she was around 14, still super tiny, scrawny, when her ski coach said to me one day, he said, "It's such a shame." He said, "Body of a 10-year-old and mind of a 40-year-old, mind and discipline of a 40-year-old. So she was, and we were talking about this morning, and I think Meredith pegged it when she speculated that there was some that Alex might have been a little on the neurotic side, and she definitely was. She was a real warrior, but
Not warrior.
worrier. Yeah, she worried a lot. Comes by that honestly too, but I don't think I ever worried that much as a child. Very focused on athletics. And she wasn't like a sucky kid. It's not like she never got in trouble, for not doing something around the house or something like that. But she was just basically focused on sports, and that translated into a lot of discipline at school. So we didn't ever have to bug her about doing homework, because she would get a project that was due in like 3 weeks, and she would come home and do it instantly because,
So we were the opposite. Oh, neat.
Yeah,
This is why Meredith and I don't work well together.
Well, and I was a total procrastinator, so I didn't get it either. But Alex would always worry that if she left it, there was a possibility that closer to 3 weeks when she had to do it, something would come up, whether it was skiing or soccer or golf or something, that she would have a time conflict. So she had time to do it. She just got things done well in advance so that nothing conflicted with her sport activities. And I mean, she played with, she had a lot of fun with her sister, and especially these girls across the street that they grew up with, and they did all the kid stuff and everything, but just not super typical, like would rather do anything.
One time I missed a birthday party to go to my soccer practice.
You were 9 years old. I remember that. And I said to your father, what the hell is wrong with her? It was a soccer practice too. It wasn't a game. It was just a practice. And I think she showed up, and there were maybe 2 other kids because the other girls were at the party. And anyway, so
I
then
was probably like, how dare they miss practice?
And then as a teen, same sort of thing. Never had to worry about her, for of course unknown reasons then, but never had to worry about her coming home pregnant. Never had to worry about her going out and doing anything stupid, drinking too much, partying too much. She wasn't going to come home with a tattoo or some nose, like nothing. She just was not, like, to the point that I think we were more worried that she should be doing more of that sort of thing. But again, just so focused on and enjoying athletics so much that she just wasn't going to destroy a day. And for, I don't know if you're still like this, but she would go to bed at night. It was like the worst time of the day because she just couldn't wait for the next day, because the next day meant like it would brought something new and activity, and she just couldn't wait until the next morning. Couldn't wait to get up. And so a little bit of a weirdo.
In the best way possible.
But in a good way. I mean,
and these are all the things Meredith really loves about me now.
I mean, like, I'm listening and I'm like, yes, and none of this has changed.
Yeah. So it was as a parent, we'd never had to worry about any of that stuff. And also, having myself dealt with, clearly disordered eating, and then having to deal with that with her sister, not realizing all the years that I was, that it was a thing when I was, all the years that I went through that. But it was interesting because Alex said to me, I think you were about 20 years old, and she said to me, and I think it's because her sister was suffering through some of this stuff. And Alex said to me, she said, I don't even think I ever gave a passing thought to what my body looked like until maybe a year ago. It kind of occurred to me like, wonder what I look like. Because it was never, ever, ever, ever about what she looked like. It was all about what she could accomplish physically. And in some respects, I think I really admired her for that. Like, I wish more people could be like that, not necessarily focused on sports, but something else that just takes their focus away from, the obsession about what you look like. And also neither of the girls were into, I mean, back then social media wasn't as intense as it is now, but Facebook was a thing, all that kind of stuff. Neither of them were into that. And she suffers from computer skills to this day. But again, just because of involvement in sports, it just wasn't a thing.
I think suffering with lack of computer skills is putting it really nicely.
Yeah, so I would say to that point, it wasn't until like really university where I actually really noticed, like had like noticed my body image, like recognized it. Like I just never, it wasn't a thing. And I didn't surround myself with people who cared about that stuff. Like even through like high school, I hung out with like a lot of boys, and even like in university I did. And I think that's part of it. But then it's interesting what my sister, it was the complete opposite. Like you kind of touched on it, and I don't know if this was brought up in the other podcast, but like she grew up with like very athletic still, and like driven in academics, but had a completely different experience around body image and food.
Very much like I had.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like you say, you know, kids are very in tune to that. Like clearly I wasn't, to what you were going through, and maybe clearly she was, but at the same time, and Meredith, you've touched on this, like I think you were saying you've had a couple clients where you ask like, oh, well, where did this come from? Like, are your parents, did your mom have a history with, you know, food and a bad relationship with food? And she was like, no, not at all. Actually, like it came from school. Like my friend group was obsessed with the way they looked and talked about food all the time. And that's how I, you know, my relationship with food kind of turned sour.
And it makes sense when you think about it, because just because your family or your parents don't, you know, they don't make a big deal out of it or don't project it. Like, what if your best friend's mom is obsessed with her body weight, and that, you know, it turns into a thing that your best school friend has, and now that's getting projected on you.
It really, like, it doesn't take much, especially as like a adolescent. I mean, I'm going to say female because that's my experience, but like even for somebody who hasn't had body image issues, like I remember somebody at the gym was like, wow, your legs are getting a lot bigger. And like in my head, I knew that he meant like that's a good thing because I'm an athlete and I'm trying to get stronger and I do CrossFit. But in my head, I was like, what? Like, is my butt like big? Like, you know, it's for somebody who doesn't even, it's kind of always, those things have always kind of bounced off me. There are certain things that kind of like make you question, like, oh, well, maybe I do need to worry about the way that my legs look. Like bigger, that's not really a good thing. So,
and I think
you can be I guess my point is that you can be like a perfect parent in that regard. There's no really such thing as perfect. But like,
oh, Alex, please.
I mean,
I know you just don't want to embarrass me, but
it just like there's so many factors, and I guess like I don't know if there's any. Obviously, I'm not a parent. I don't know if you have any specific advice to like helping a parent avoid a teenager running into these issues. Is like,
yeah. So having learned the hard way, and what we learned about in our case, it was disordered eating, but it's anxiety and poor body image and all that sort of thing. I'm just going to backtrack a bit and say, you know, Alex, you said you didn't hang around with people who were into that. Evan, your sister did more. She kind of was more of a girly girl and hung around with girls. And some of those girls were kind of bitchy and they would make comments. And but I will say that you grew up with a lot of people kind of making fun of you, and also all of the years of people just assuming you were a boy. And you had short hair. And I remember my mother used to say, oh, you know, I wish she'd grow her hair out and she wouldn't have to go through that. And I was like, I'm glad that I have a kid who's prepared to walk around with short hair because she wants short hair and doesn't give a crap about somebody who thinks she's a boy. Like, it just didn't matter and sometimes she took pride in it because it was how she played sports that, you know, so I think some people are more predisposed to it to begin with. But also, even though you maybe, you know, didn't go through a thing with food, and that's the other thing. I mean, as a kid, as a teen, we never had to worry about you eating too much sugar. Like, you were just kind of a freak in that respect. Like, I would hide how much sugar I ate from you because I was embarrassed by it. But going back and, you know, I think everybody's kind of got their thing. And even though it wasn't a food thing for you, I think a lot of your anxiety, and when we laugh about you being anal or, you know, a worrier and stuff, that part of it is innate, but part of it comes from, I think, how you were raised and how I was. You know, I was always on the edge, and as far as advice goes, and I mean, some people, I think, you know, we've talked about this, and you have said that you were glad that I was on the edge and let you do as much as we let you do. And who knows? I mean, I think it took its toll. But as far as advice goes, from what I've learned, I think the most important thing, whether it's a small kid or a teenage kid or your spouse or your parent, I think the most important thing that you can do is not dismiss a person's feelings. That to me is like
validation.
Validation. So if you have, and I'm sure I did this to you guys to some extent. So if you have a kid who's upset, and it's upset over something stupid, or a kid comes home because, the boy they like doesn't like them and stuff. I think what I've learned is it's not a good thing to just say, "Oh, don't cry, stop. That's silly. Don't be ridiculous." There's nothing better than somebody saying, "I feel really badly for you." Even if you've never experienced it yourself, you can say, "I've never gone through that before, but I would imagine it really, I can see why you're upset." And let that person, especially a child, experience those emotions. Because again, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but from what I've learned in my experience with one of my daughters about myself, and then a board that I'm on that helps deal with these issues with adolescent women, if you can express those feelings, you end up going somewhere, a wrong place in your brain, and that's where you start dealing with your emotions through food, through exercise, through whatever. I mean, there's a million things you could do. You could be punching people. It could be anything. And so I think personally, being a non-expert, just from what I've learned, that's probably one of the most important things. And I have learned it, and I've changed with you. And I will say that you're more like that with me.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of it for me, and I don't know, Meredith, if you can attest to this, we've over the last several years together, we're similar, but we're very different. You are more relaxed in a way, and I definitely have anxiety stuff. So I've, you used to say to me "Oh, don't be silly. Don't worry about it. What are you worrying about? It's going to be fine." It's that doesn't work for me. That's me. You don't understand. You don't understand. I'm trying to I'm not heard. And you probably are this, there's certain things with me that you're she doesn't get it.
Yeah.
So it's deep, being in a deep relationship with somebody that is very different from you kind of helps force you to learn as well. And then also dealing with people on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think you have to, I guess, realize you're not, I can't fully understand because I'm not you, and I don't deal with things the way that you do, and you don't deal with things the way that I do. And so, you can't say I get it, but you can create space for someone to have their feelings. Or
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And it's not about it's not about understanding. It's not. It's about you can say I understand that must be hard for you, even though I can't.
Exactly.
I can't comprehend it because it's not the way that I am. And I think it's not only being in a relationship, but it's also it's dealing with hundreds of people, and it's being able to be an active listener. And one of the things that I've become really sensitive to, and I notice when other people do it, is when someone's having a hard time, with whatever. I think there's this natural human tendency to go, "Oh yeah, a similar thing happened to me, and this was my experience." Don't do that. You don't need to do that. What you need to do in most situations is just acknowledge that they're going through a hard time, and I understand this is difficult. If you need anything, if you need to talk to somebody, I'm available. I think a lot of times when you flip it around and turn someone's experience into a storytelling session for you, it kind of makes people feel oh, they don't really care.
Yeah. Remember when Evan had cancer and she'd be like, "Well, I have cancer." And they'd be like, "Oh, my uncle had cancer. He died."
Yeah.
It's seriously?
But people do that automatically. It's and I know they're probably just trying to make you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
It's "Oh, well, I had a similar experience." But not always the right time to tell people about that. And I have I know I used to have a big tendency to do that, and now I don't so much.
Well, and as a from a child, for a brain that's developing, it's really important to let that, again, I don't want to sound like I'm a psychologist, but from what I've learned, it's really important to let that person experience their emotions, whether it's anger, whether it's sadness, whatever it is, let them express it fairly openly. Otherwise, it can just get tucked away. And as I said, you start using the wrong part of your brain and you start turning to other things to try to regulate those emotions. And it just, it creates a lot of problems.
There's a therapist once told me, because I I always think worst case scenario about things. So like, you know, if we lose a client or something, it's like, oh my gosh, the business is going to fail. And so my tendency is to talk to Meredith or you about things like, oh, I'm really worried about this. And she said a lot of people, or especially parents, will kind of go into like problem solving mode. Like, okay, let's logic our way out of this. And so it's like, okay, so what's the worst that can, like, or is that even likely? Like, you have this many clients, if you lose one, does it mean no? Of course not. It's fine. It's going to be fine. Whereas like, and then you start learning that. But again, like you said, like you never actually think like, okay, how would it feel if like the business failed? What would I do? Like, and then you kind of, you naturally yourself kind of get to the point where it's like, oh, it's actually going to be fine. And even if it's not, it's still going to be fine. Mm-hmm. Rather than someone just being like, you'll be fine.
Don't be ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, don't be ridiculous. So my generation,
just calm down.
So I'm not blaming. I'm not blaming my parents. I'm not going to name names. Oh, I'll turn Alicia. No, I'm just kidding. But my generation, there was a lot of that, right? Because that's what they learned, and so a lot of it is shutting it down, and so you get this. And as adults, regardless of how we were raised, like you reach a point where deal with it because, you're an adult and you should be able to. So you can't really blame anybody. But I think my generation, when we were growing up, there was a lot of that just shut her down. Like, oh, don't be ridiculous. Or, my mother's thing was...
Or Meredith's family where it's like, where's the rug? grab the broom, just sweep it right under.
Well, my mother was like...
The rug's a little lumpy.
So my mother was raised where there was a big focus on what you looked like. Like appearance was huge. And my grandfather was an immigrant from the Ukraine, and he was very image conscious. And he would tell her, your hair is your crowning glory. And she was obsessed with her hair and stuff. And so she was,
And, me too. And you know what? That stuck with me.
And so one time... And she would always talk about, and it was always like if I had a friend who was super smart and I'd be talking about my friend and she'd say, well, you're smart too. I'm sure you're smarter than they are. Things like that. I mean, so one time we were at a ski race and one of Alex's teammates had a really bad race and she was sitting in the lodge. And I said to Alex, what would your grandmother say to her? And she turned to her friend and she said, well, you're prettier than all of them. So it was different problem solving. But there was a lot of the shutdown stuff, that was for sure. Nobody wanted to see crying. Anyway. Good times.
Happy times. Okay, one of the last questions we got was, how did you celebrate Alex coming out as gay to your law colleagues?
To my law colleagues?
Yeah. Or did you?
Or guess
no
friends.
Is a fine answer. Yeah. Friends, coworkers.
Okay, I guess the question would be more like, well, how was your experience with me coming out?
Yeah.
Were you embarrassed? Did you not tell anybody?
Alex, I'd spent so many years being embarrassed of you that, for various reasons. No, I wasn't embarrassed. So I think we might have covered this at some point, but I remember the time you told me and everything. And I had said for a number of years and then watch you have a couple of relationships with men. I was really worried. I thought she's either gay or she is incapable of connecting with another person in that way. And that really worried me because I felt like you wanted to connect eventually with somebody, and I just didn't want you to spend your life without someone if you wanted someone. And so I was a bit relieved, but we knew, and your father and I never talked about it, but I said to him after, did you kind of know? And he was like, yeah, so it didn't come as any surprise at all. It wasn't a big deal. I mean, yeah, it wasn't a big deal. I had the usual, you worry for a little bit, like that your life might be a little bit more difficult than it would be if you were heterosexual. But no, I mean,
We always ask, you always say, like, well, I wonder how, like, my grandpa, if he ever talks about his granddaughter, like, and Meredith. Like, does he say, like, oh, Alex and Meredith? Or do they talk about that? I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I wonder if...
Because he's definitely from, like, a completely different.
Yeah. I mean, he certainly, with us, seems to have accepted it quickly, and I don't think he thought. He claims he wasn't surprised, and he certainly likes Meredith. I mean, he's very happy to have her.
Meredith
in the
puts him in
family.
his place.
Oh, and she definitely puts it, and we're very grateful for that. But yeah, I don't know if he talks about his daughter and her girlfriend. I don't know that he's telling all of his friends that his daughter's getting married to another woman. I don't know.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, so what? I mean, the fact that he is the way he is around us is good enough for me.
What did your dad say?
Oh, he said he knew. And I was like, well, geez, thanks for letting me get married, Dad. Really appreciate you.
Meredith, have you...
Have you ever considered the possibility? I'm just going to throw this out there. So don't get offended when I say that. Have you ever thought about maybe that you're gay? Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like,
well,
he's
that's the
gonna say
thing.
that.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to say, but when Alex was struggling to tell me, I finally turned to her and I said, "You're gay?" Like, do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So it's, it wasn't that big a deal. I was glad that she was able to sort of deal with it. And yeah.
Yeah.
And now look at us.
And I'm going to say that...
you like Meredith more than me.
Well, I had moments where, I'm going to be honest, like just for maybe a half a day, I kind of thought, oh, she'll never have that like traditional wedding and traditional pregnancy if they ever have kids or whatever. But that went away. I mean, that was just a very momentary, I don't know if it was even selfish. It was just more of a thought. But then I said to Alex, like, I think I kind of like having another girl around. It's just way more fun than having a guy. Like, we can share things like chin hair talk that I probably would share it with a boyfriend, but
I call those Frankies, the chin hairs.
yeah.
You can use that if you
Trust
like.
me, you don't know what chin hairs are at this point. Trust me.
Yeah.
You
She's
know-
offended that you even have a name for them.
When you can do Movember, that's
Then we
not
talk.
on purpose. Yeah, that's when you've reached that age, the chin hair age.
You get in the car and you look in the mirror and you're like, oh my God. And that's why you have to keep tweezers in your car.
Oh, Meredith doesn't use those like she doesn't use a magnifying mirror.
Well, why would I? Because I don't do my eyebrows.
Yeah, true.
I mean, I do have them done. Let me specify.
Yeah.
that.
I have a little eyebrow thing I'm going to show you that I bought.
An
I don't use it
eyebrow
on
thing?
my eyebrows, but yeah, it's just, anyway, I'll show it to you. You see
Okay.
if you like it for
Yeah.
emergencies.
Yeah.
But yeah, those magnifying mirrors, like you reach an age where you need them, but they're really scary. They are really scary.
I think I'll just do like laser hair removal eventually.
Heard that's painful.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. I've had it done. Armpits
Totally.
and one other area that I won't specify. Pee-pee.
That's all the questions we have. What do you
Yeah. I don't have anything else.
have?
What are you doing for the rest of the day?
Well, I'm going home and preparing for a Saturday night dinner.
What are we having?
We're having pork with, I can't remember what kind of balsamic sauce that you like, and roast potatoes and asparagus and cupcakes. And Meredith and I may have a little nip of wine.
Just a nip. I opened a bottle the other day, so I'll bring that over, the rest of it.
Is it good? What is it?
It's like a Sonoma County cab.
Ah.
It's pretty delightful.
And if it's not great, you can just serve that one to Walter.
He does
Oh,
not care.
right. That's right. We
Yeah.
can give that to your grandfather. We'll give him the pork ends too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think people will like this.
I know, like, you're my mom, but you're a good person to have on, because we sit here and we're like 30, 31, 32, 33, and we're like, oh yeah, menopause. Like, you just keep training and it's, you'll be fine. But they're probably sitting there like, you don't even know what I'm going through. But it's
think a
nice to
lot of
have somebody
people-
who's gone through it and who can attest to what we say about it.
I think some people it's harder than it is for others. And
Yeah,
like I had
for sure.
hot flashes for like 6 months and then they were gone. You hear about women who have them for like 6 years or something. But even that, it's hot flashes and maybe you're not sleeping as well and everything. But I don't think it's like you should stop doing things. I don't.
No, yeah. And I think that's...
I don't think you decide to stop. I think things change. You're older, so you're like, you don't have as much energy.
People
Yeah.
retire and they start going easier on themselves and they
Yeah.
might be drinking more and
It's definitely a lifestyle shift. Yeah, and it is going to be different for everybody, right? And that's just kind of, women live that life. It's like everything is, it's different month to month. It's different person to person. Like, the experience is going to vary, but there are some things that you can do that will universally make it easier.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Cool. Thanks again. This was great.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Like, subscribe. You can follow Brenda at Alex's mom, Brenda, even though she doesn't post a ton, but maybe she will. And drop us suggestions if you want to hear about anything specific on the next podcast. Thanks for listening.